8 years ago, a lot of people thought that it couldn't happen.
The 8th annual Baltimore Music Awards.
We need to acknowledge our people out there, but in our own community, it was something needed.
Watch the results show Sunday, December the 16th at 12 noon via RadioOnFire.com or BaltimoreMusicAwards.com.
Good morning to you. Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. This is your girl V, Miss V, the V Mix. I am here on Radio on Fire, 11 a.m. to 12. I'm very excited. I first want to thank my last Saturday guest, not the 17th, but I want to say the 10th, November the 10th. I had the group New Era. I thought I was prepared for the interview. I did not know they were blood brothers. It was really, really awesome. I had a great time, as y'all can see. If y'all can go back and catch me live on YouTube TV. Also, you can catch the live streams on RadioOnFire.com. Also, it's mobile apps, so make sure you download your mobile apps. And again, I'm your girl V, Miss V. This is the V Mix Radio Show. And again, I want to thank New Era. Happy birthday to my mom. Her birthday was November the 19th. New Era stopped by. Gave my mom some vocals. Thank you. Gave my mom some vocals. It was awesome. I really appreciate that. And again, Thanksgiving was great for me and my family. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Today joining me, I have a talented, wonderful, awesome guest. He is council member of the District 8. His name is Mr. Kristerfer Burnett.
Thank you for having me.
No, awesome, cool. Of course, like it's no brainer. We're gonna get into some endeavors that he has coming up in January. But I wanted to talk about, we just recently had an election. And I think everyone was surprised that Vangelis did not take it. So I was going to get into that with you as well. But tell us a little bit about yourself before I just start rambling and asking you a whole bunch of questions.
Sure. So Chris Burnett, I was elected in 2016 to the city council. I represent the 8th district, which is in West Baltimore, where I'm a third-generation homeowner there with my wife, Vanessa. I live in the middle of the district, so I live in Evanston Village, but it goes all the way up to like the Howard Park area, all the way down to Beachfield, Irvington, Yale Heights. So the main arteries are like Edmonton, Frederick Avenue, Liberty Heights, Hilton Parkway. I have the west side of Hilton. That's actually where the dividing line is between myself and Councilmember Bullock. And yeah, before running, I was a community organizer. Worked at the Service Employees Union. I worked for a community development corporation up in Park Heights. I used to be a substitute teacher back in the day, among a bunch of other random jobs, but always was really involved in my neighborhood. I used to run the Evanston Village Farmers Market with a bunch of my neighbors, planting trees.
Your grandma inspired you, right?
Tell
us a little bit about your grandmother inspiration. East Baltimore area?
East Baltimore, yeah. So she found out she was going to be losing her home due to the expansion of Hopkins Hospital and the EBDI project back in the early 2000s. At the time, she worked at the hospital, and pretty much outside of that was just really involved in her church. And when she found out that she was going to lose the house that I grew up in, that that she had owned, she fought back. And so she became the vice president of State of Middle East Action Committee. And fought like crazy to save her home, but also to fight for others. Yeah, which was the big deal. Was pushing to make sure that everybody who was going to be displaced got a fair deal, and if they wanted to come back, that they had the opportunity to do so. But a real big narrative around how we do development in the city, how we push people out, gentrification, all of that was at play. And so that's what watching her stand up introduced me to community organizing work.
Wonderful. Shout out to Grandma.
She's still
definitely.
Yeah.
Shout out to Grandma. How are you?
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to get this big shout out when she's passed away or something like that. So shout out to Grandma. Congratulations on that. So she's actually the first person who introduced you to the community development, leadership, and the community and things of that nature. So after that is when you kind of got into it since middle school, high school.
So no, in high school I was all about sports. I played lacrosse, football, I ran track. I went to University of Maryland, initially majoring in kinesiology. So I was supposed to be a physical therapist, and I started doing organizing work on campus with a group called Community Roots. I didn't start it, but I was there when it was like 10 people and watched it grow. We ran an after-school program called Seeds. We mentored. We tried to get the university to divest from Maryland Correctional Enterprises, which uses prison labor to produce furniture for the whole entire University of Maryland system, and pretty much most state offices. And that was like my first organizing campaign. I ended up switching my major through just loving of doing that work, to African American studies with a concentration in public policy.
So because me doing my research, I was kind of like, okay, so it was something you always was into with the introduction from your grandma, but it's actually, you said, and it started in college because you was organizing some groups there, and then you switched your major. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was always sort of following. Too. Yeah, okay. Everybody does it. What'd you graduate with?
I graduated with criminal justice, but I started out with communications. It was a journalism major that Coppin State University had. Okay. But I didn't have I was kind of like an introvert at the time. You know, I think some people grow into being an extrovert. Like everyone isn't like flamboyant or good with people or good with putting themselves out there. But I kind of grew into it. I started out with a communications major, and I was like, am I really ready for that? And it switched into criminal justice because I was into like debating and political things, you know, debating and stuff of that nature. So it switched for me. So I'm glad to know that.
Everybody switches at least. And actually, technically, I switched 3 times. I came in biology.
Okay.
And then I was like, nah, that's crazy. Let me narrow the focus to sports. But like I said, my interest just changed. And I still love, you know, working with kids, working with young athletes. And do want to get into coaching. Obviously, my time is really hard, but you know, I still haven't lost my love for athletics and that kind of thing. Because I think there's a lot to learn especially for kids. When you talk about we want stuff for kids to do in Baltimore, and often they're going to be drawn to football and basketball, and outside of just like it being good to develop athleticism and the healthy side of it, it teaches a lot of discipline, and that's what I got out of my athletic career that I think still translates into the work I do now. Is like willingness to work as a team, caring about others, and then just the focus of like trying to get better. And that competitive edge even helps in politics. So I didn't, it was good to start there and finish in a different way because I still approach it that way.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. A lot of people, I would say youth, a lot of children, they really do want to be a physical therapy or a football player, things of that nature. And I just wanted to get the background of actually how you got into politics because I know you go around, you speak to students. You just went to the Green
Street Academy.
Okay, so how did that go? And do you find it where people shy away from the majors of social justice? I know you got your master's degree in public policy. Do you find it where when it's time to get that education and we go into school and we electing our majors and things of that nature, do you find it where they don't select to take courses in political courses, social justice? You get where I'm going?
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm glad you tied it to my visit to Green Street because the reason they brought me there was they have a class on social justice, and so there were a number of they were like middle school, high school kids who were doing a project. So it was a speaker series where they wanted to there was a social justice speaker series, was what they called it, and they wanted to bring in people who do community organizers, activists, and I was a part of that. In that, like, they wanted an elected official to come in and talk about the importance of voting, the importance of civic engagement, and so most of the kids did have a lot of great questions for me around some of them I wasn't even ready for, around, environmental justice. They had a lot of questions about just how the city works, school funding. I mean, our kids are paying attention. And so it's important for us to encourage them to continue and go in that direction. But part of what I asked, one of my questions for them was, how many of you don't believe in voting? Because obviously a good number of kids who have that lens probably are going to be, signing up to vote as soon as they can. But there were like 4 or 5 kids who raised their hands and
that didn't
believe in voting. And I said, why? And they were, of course, it was like, your politicians are all the same. They lie, they cheat, they steal. They didn't think it mattered, or my vote didn't count. And one of the things I wanted to and I knew those things would come out because, one, I have family members that feel that way still, even though I work in politics.
A lot of people didn't vote and been jealous not taking no races because, well, I'm not going to say that, but I feel a lot of people felt that way. Like, it doesn't matter because no offense, Sam from New Era, I brought up it on my last show. I was like, when you believe in voting? He said, well, that's for another story, another topic. No, but I don't believe in voting. I didn't vote. So out of the 5 out of the group, I want to say a good 2 or 3 maybe cast their vote. Not too many people believe in it.
Yeah. Well, and here's what I tell folks, and this is what I told the kids. So one of the ways I gave this example, right? We just had Thanksgiving, so I feel like it's appropriate. Okay. You either have a seat at the table or you're what's being served. And if you don't participate in the process and take your seat at the table, and it's more than just voting. You know, a lot of times we say we only see elected officials during an election time, or you know, when you're running for office, the only time you're coming around. Right. But my pushback is, well, I only see you when it's an election time. Why am I not seeing you in City Hall? Why am I not seeing you at the school board? Why am I not seeing you in Annapolis, right? There are issues that come across all of our desks every day around policing, around school funding, around our roads. I mean, people hate potholes, but when the budget comes around, taxpayer night's a little skimpy, and we need to get people out. But the one other piece I'll mention is when the way modern campaigns are run. So you looked at my bio. I didn't really have a lot of political experience before running for office. In fact, I was always on the other side of it around issue organizing. So I was in City Hall.
But just talk about how important it is to do issue organizing, because I think a lot of people are not, like you're saying, participating in the city halls. Just give us why it's important, because a lot of people aren't involved. Well,
so I'll say this: when I first ran, the first time I worked on a campaign was my friend and mentor, Senator Corey McCray in the 45th District in East Baltimore. But I was his campaign manager back in 2014 when he was running for delegate. And we both came from labor union organizing. And one of the things that stood out in that work was that, you know, modern campaigns, we get a list of who the voters are and who votes. So when we're knocking on doors, we don't have enough resources to knock on everybody's house. My district has 43,000 people in it. So when I'm running for office, I cannot knock on 43,000 doors. I knocked on 10,000 doors, which is a lot, but that's still a bunch of people who we didn't get to. Okay. And the list that we use to go door to door is people who are registered to vote. So what communities do you think, if we're knocking on doors in a community that everybody's registered, that means everybody on that block is getting an opportunity to weigh in on what they want for their community. They're getting to complain about what's going on in the alley, or on their street, or on their block, or with the lighting. Okay. So what neighborhood do you think gets more investment? Which ones do you think get more attention from folks who are, you know, and in my job, like I do my best to try and make sure I'm at every community meeting I can get to, every community block I can walk on. If they invite me out, I'm there. And if they don't invite me out, I try to show up anyway, just to stay on top of it. But when you talk about electoral politics, if you don't even get an opportunity to meet the candidate, to weigh in on them, everybody has a political opinion about something, right? There's people who say they don't believe in politics. Yeah, you do. Because you care about, if you have children, you care about what's going on in schools, you care about the curriculum, you want them to have access to a computer, you want them to have a new school building, you want the drinkable water fountains and the heat. Absolutely. All of this is all decisions that are made in politics, right? How we fund schools, that's a political decision, right? We're about to have an elected school board in 2022, or 2 positions. That's important, right? When we talk about educating our kids. And so these are things that you, if nothing else, should be demanding a seat at the table, your perspective and voice in what's going on, how that money's being spent. Your tax dollars are being spent one way or the other, right? We all pay taxes. Even if you're not working, if you go to that corner store and you buy a soda, you're paying into the system. That's we have a bottle tax, we have a sales tax, and that money, the bottle tax, is supposed to be going to schools. The sales tax goes to the general fund, and that really impacts your life. And so I tell people, especially on my level of politics, all politics is local. And, you know, the decisions that I make day to day have a huge impact on anybody in Baltimore's life, probably more than what you'll see an impact from who your congressperson is, right? But a lot of people feel like that's their perspective on politics, is what they see on CNN or MSNBC. But down in City Hall on Holiday Street, there's a lot of big things happening that people need to weigh in on. And so that's why I say it's an injustice, to a sense, to not vote, to not show up, because at the end of the day, if you want your community better, there's people who can make those decisions that need to hear from you. I need that perspective. I need to know what you feel about my vote on minimum wage, or gun legislation, or criminal justice reform. I know you did that work. Yes. Those are all important things that we need to hear from people. And so it's more than voting. But that's the first start. That's the entry into the work. And when I talked to the kids about that, they kind of got it. They were like, well,
the students
yeah. By the end of it, they were like, oh, I need to register right now, because I want you to come, because I was like, look, literally, I'm standing on people's doorsteps. When I was running for office, the thing that drove my staff crazy was how much time I would spend sitting on the porch just talking to people, especially older folks, our seniors, because they just had the whole history of the community. They've been in the house 30, 40 years.
And that's good to know for you.
Yeah, for my work. Yeah, so, but I'm going to places where people are registered to vote. So I'm not sitting on the stoop. I mean, if I saw you out there, of course I'm going to rap to you, but otherwise, like, you know, again, I got to get to these 200 people who I know are going to come out. And so make me come to your doorstep. Make me talk to you. Make me work harder. You know, that's important. If we want to hold people accountable, it's not just in elections. And even if you don't believe in voting, that still is no excuse to not come out to the school board. You know, it's no excuse to not come to Annapolis when we have a 15-year school funding formula about to change in January, which through the Kerwin Commission. And so that's why I tell people it's important to be a part of the process, because there's so much happening that people, I know they care about. I see the Facebook comments.
Do you think it's lack of like education, or you think it's they discouraged because of, like, because a lot of people did go out and vote, I would say, for Hillary. Trump still took the race, yada, 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 oh, voting don't matter. You know, it's like a history of disappointment, let down. Do you think it's a lack of education and or both, or like disappointment, letdowns, as far as when, because a lot of people was involved with the Obama race, we know that.
Sure.
That was really, that was like a epic awakening. So what do you think? Do you think it's like lack of resources or education? Because the resources are there. I wouldn't say that, like lack of education, why people don't know how to be involved in that community, why it's important, and actually, you know, participate. And what do you
Yeah, I think there should be a civics education in city schools, especially on how city government works. Okay. It's important that we also know, obviously, how the White House and Congress operates, and I think that's what most people get. So they don't really make the connection between the work that's happening in Baltimore and in D.C. and how they're both really important. I think a lot of people don't understand the process. Like, what is a bill? You know, when things pop up on the news, like the city council is considering banning plastic bags. We're not doing that, but we might try. There's environmental issues. But nonetheless, that just means that a council person came forward with the idea, but there's a whole bunch of public hearings that go into it. There's a whole bunch of city agencies that weigh in, and hearing from people is definitely a part of the process. Like, there's been some bills that I've changed before I got them through, that had community members not reached out to me and said, hey, we got a problem with this or that, or did you think about this part of the work or the outcome of what you're trying to do on our community or our interests. We've had to make some changes because that's a good idea. I'm glad you reached out because we don't know everything. But I think, it's absolutely the resources, and we just got to make government more accessible, right? Like, I'm constantly pushing to have like later hearings or having more things broadcast. Now, you can watch all the council hearings on YouTube. Well, not all of them. A good amount of them are on YouTube, on the Charm TV portal or Channel 25. But yeah, people do have to educate themselves. And I'll say this though, part of it's like there is a change in culture. I feel like the younger generation is a lot more engaged around issues than I've seen in my time in doing both organizing and activism work, and now as an elected official for almost 2 years. The biggest example I'll say was we did a ban on polystyrene containers, those styrofoam trays that are on school lunches. That issue was led by 2 students from Poly, I believe. Or one went to Poly, one went to City. And they would get on the bus.
That is so cool. Awesome. Shout out to the 2 students that was involved.
Yeah, they were awesome. They were like some of the most educated lobbyists I have sat down with. They were tough. They knew the issues. They knew what was important. And they knew everything, the whole science behind it, the environmental impact. They helped write the bill, and I mean, it was great. And they organized rallies out in front of City Hall and in Annapolis. I mean, they're great. And those are young people who picked the issue, picked something that was important to them once they learned about it in school, and then followed the process the whole way through. And we got it done because of them. And so I think, if we, again, I'll go back. If you don't claim your seat at the table, especially on the local level and local politics, it may be hard to go down and testify before Congress or go. I mean, that's just so far removed. Okay. But the day-to-day of what goes on in Baltimore City, what goes on in Annapolis, and our state legislator, are day-to-day decisions that really will change your life. And so you should follow along a little bit closer. And it's not mean that you got to be down there every week. But, you know, just
drop your site, because the site is
Yeah.
actually where they can put their, if they need requests or have requests or
Sure.
some issues with anything, you can go to your website.
Yeah, BeMoreDistrict8.com.
Okay.
And you can follow me I'm on Instagram at Kristerfer B, Facebook, Councilman Kristerfer Burnett, Twitter, Councilman KB. And or they can just email me, Kristerfer.Burnett@BaltimoreCity.gov.
So if once they do that, someone would like tell us a day to day if someone has a request and they shoot you an email or they send a request through your site.
Mm-hmm.
How do you resolve that issue? Like, not resolve it, but get the questions. You get the questions and you start doing your research and give us a day to day.
The day-to-day of a councilman?
Councilman.
So, every day is different. It's not like
Okay.
a normal 9 to 5. You don't like sit around with the whole council every day and like talk through issues.
Okay.
It's very much you're on your own. I have a staff of 3 people that work with me. And I wake up, I check my email. A lot of people will email me with, hey, I'm dealing. It can be anything. I've had people. I helped a guy who emailed me from living inside of his car who needed housing. I've helped people with sewage in their basements. I've helped people get school scholarships to BCCC. Shoot me an email if you're going to Baltimore City Community College. I can help you with books. It really potholes, sewer main. I mean, high grass and weeds in the summer. When the winter, we start having issues with pipes. So a lot of my day is taking in constituent communications, either if they're phone call or email. And then sending them out to whatever agency needs to deal with it or following up with calls. And then a lot of it's meetings. So I get a lot of organizations that'll reach out. Maybe they're nonprofits who want to do work in my district or work in schools. They'll reach out to me. I'll get people who want to work with the city or fix up vacant houses. Did
you get a call for the? I think it's called the mobility human trafficking.
Yeah. Oh,
so
yeah.
how did that come about?
Oh, human trafficking. Because
I seen you've been going out doing some speaking engagements about
human trafficking.
Is Baltimore City a part in human trafficking? Can you educate us on that?
Sure.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm trying to get you because you got a lot going on, and I think a lot of people are lacking the education or resources. They don't know how easy it is, or I want to say convenient. It can be very convenient to reach out to your local, even though you're District 8. You ever so recommend to reach out to one of the I want to say.
Yeah, I can plug you in. Yeah, so it's 14. Yeah, 14 council members, one at-large president that make up the whole council. So human trafficking. So I didn't run on that issue. I didn't know a whole lot about it before running for office. And one day I had a constituent of mine reach out and said, Councilman, one of my students went missing. She went to Western High School. And eventually she was found in D.C. and was believed to be trafficked. And I didn't know much about the issue at all. And so I reached out to, I'm on 4 committees, so I work in some civic stuff as well. But I'm on the Youth and Education Committee, Public Safety Committee, Executive Appointments, and Housing and Urban Affairs, and the HIV Commission. And so I reached out to Councilman Cohen, who chairs the Education Committee, and said, look, can we do a hearing on this issue of human trafficking? This was also when it was a lot of people locked in because of what was happening in D.C., sort of that D.C. hashtag, D.C. missing girls. All of this was sort of swirling around. And I was like, well, look, I don't know how we legislate, because that's the other part of my job is I write legislation. I don't know how we legislate a fix to this, but let me, let's call a hearing. Let me get an understanding of what's going on. So we had a hearing at Dunbar, where we brought in every law enforcement agency, the school system, a bunch of organizations that work with victims of human trafficking and survivors of human trafficking, and just heard their stories. And I can tell you that was the hardest hearing I've been through, was hearing the testimony of people who have been human trafficked from Baltimore. And a couple things were clear. There were a lot of people doing a lot of really good work across the whole city of Baltimore to help survivors get back on their feet, which was great. The law enforcement was doing okay in these investigations, but what was very clear was that nobody was talking to anybody. So you had your advocacy groups on one side, you had your survivor groups helping people, but sort of in isolation. You had government on the other end. And so what I did was I put in legislation last July to create the Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative. And the idea being that we can, if we're all sitting around the table together, sharing information, sharing best practices, working through ideas on how to tackle this collectively, because just like any other crime, there's a lot of things that go into human trafficking or push people into that life. And it's not always what you see on TV, where you may think it's like a van that just jumps out and kidnaps somebody. A lot of times, people can be trafficked by their own family members. We had a survivor that gave testimony. We do these community trainings throughout the city, and we had a survivor that shared that her uncle actually pushed her into doing sex work for money and then sold her to another pimp. And so that kind of thing happens more than people would like to happen, and really don't want to really acknowledge. But it's not just
somebody close.
Yeah, it's often people close, or an older boyfriend, or you have people who are just susceptible to it, right? So you see a lot of, in foster homes, you'll have a lot of recruiters who will go in, traffickers who will go in and try and recruit kids in foster homes. But really what we see is that a lot of it's about poverty, right? So if, people do it to maybe pay bills, or they're susceptible to it because somebody's providing them with something that they don't have. And so they'll go into it like any other trade. But human trafficking globally is the new form of slavery, and it has been. Outside of maybe drug trafficking, human trafficking globally is the second biggest crime in the globe. And in Baltimore specifically, it's particularly an issue because of where we are. So we are along the 95 corridor. So you got New York, Philadelphia, DC, all the way down to Atlanta. These places have money. Maryland has money. You have sporting events. You have casinos. And so these are things that attract traffickers because they want to go where people have money and they're willing to spend it on sex. And there's labor trafficking, which is this whole other thing. There was a big bust a couple years ago of a sushi spot down in downtown Baltimore that had workers from all over the world crammed in these like crazy quarters, were being forced to work 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day.
I'm so happy you came today.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. And so we started the collaborative. So I learned a lot about how traffickers work, how pervasive it is in our area. So Baltimore City has the highest incidence of human trafficking in the state of Maryland and in the region.
Where could we get information about human trafficking?
So they can follow us on Facebook. Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative has a Facebook page where we post community events and trainings. We're doing a workshop in January, but we've done 2 already. So we do these community trainings in areas that people are upset about open-air sex markets. And the reason we do that is because a lot of times and even in this work, you got to be careful because there are people who legitimately just want to get paid to have sex and they're not being trafficked. But the definition of trafficking is you're doing it through force, fraud, or coercion. So you are doing it not under the pretenses of I'm just trying to do this, and so you got to be careful in how we frame the issue. But if you are a child, you cannot consent to commercial sex being paid. So if you're under 18, that's sexual assault, and trafficking if you're paying for it, or if you're forcing someone to do it for money. Over 18, it becomes a little bit more difficult to sort of frame it because maybe they started being a victim of trafficking and then continued into the work. But it's a huge issue. And so what our collaborative does is we have 4 committees. So I do want to talk about the work being done because it is sad. So we had that hearing. We started our collaborative last December. So this year, December will be the first year that we. December will be the first year, our 1-year anniversary. We have 4 committees. So we have a victim services committee, which has almost every organization in Baltimore and the region that helps people who are victims of human trafficking find resources, wraparound services, trauma-informed counseling, that kind of thing. We have a law enforcement subcommittee, which is important to me because what I found from that original hearing was that nobody was working together. So you might have the state police doing an investigation, which was separate from the FBI and police department, or even within the police department, you had multiple divisions that weren't really collaborating and communicating. So now we have all of those folks in the room with the state's attorney's office, learning how to build better cases. And we had a huge arrest actually earlier this year where there was a big arrest of a trafficker who had 25 victims that were operating in several hotels in downtown Baltimore. All of them were under the age of 18.
Wow,
yeah, it's a big deal. And so victim services, law enforcement, the legislative committee. Obviously, I chair that one where I am working on bills to try and help connect people to information and resources. We also just got a $300,000 allocation from the mayor's office to fund a grant program for organizations that help survivors, and so that was a big deal. We've never done that before. And so that hopefully will be up and running by December, so organizations can apply. But it's a good chunk of change for real to help people get beds or whatever, things that they need to help people get back out of their life.
You are busy.
It's a lot. Yeah,
you are busy.
It's a lot of work.
You need people more involved.
Oh,
it
yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah.
And they can go to your website to get involved.
Yeah. Have them reach out.
What is the day? All right, so your wife,
So
your
the
beautiful
day-to-day.
wife, Vanessa, you still gotta make sure she's good, and y'all
Yeah.
need to still be popping.
Yeah.
How do you find the time for the person? I do want to get involved. I really do. For a person like me, working full time, trying to stay social, I got this radio thing going on. How do I can kind of like fit it in my schedule? How do I get involved for the people who do want to help and they feel like they can't help, but they busy? Help me.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And so whatever that looks like to you. So, how many girls want to be a radio host someday, right?
Right.
Going into schools, talking about it, reaching out to girls groups or mentoring or ways that you can give back. And our young people need guidance. So,
Yes.
they see you doing your thing. Help them, help reach back out. Hey, this is how we do it, or this is the technology that we use, or this is how we record, or we have a whole production thing that y'all can't see right here, which is there's a science behind this, right? So I think that alone can make an impact on a young person's life, and of course, following along. What's going on in City Hall. You can go on Baltimore City Legistar, Legistar, and sign up for alerts. And you can get an email that shows you every bill that's coming before the council and just things that you may feel passionate about, right? And you can always reach out to me. Hey, I'm interested in doing X or Y, or tell me more about water bills, or tell me more about the biggest thing I can say right now, and I'm just going to have to make a plug for it, is
everything you need.
So every 10 or 15 years, the state does the funding formula for state schools. So how we calculate how much money goes to each jurisdiction it's called per pupil funding formula. So for the last 2-3 years, what's called the Kerwin Commission, which is a mix up of education advocates, legislators, former elected officials, people who know a lot about education in schools, former principals, school leaders, et cetera, have been pretty much looking at, all right, how do we fund schools? And then what they do is they'll come up with a report, which comes out next month, called the Kerwin Report, from the Kerwin Commission. And what that will change is our funding formula for the next 15 years. So that's a generation of kids that will be impacted one way or the other on where the money comes from. And I know a lot of people say it's not about the money. I hear that all the time. It is about the money
because that's how you get your resources and your books and your better lunches and stuff.
Better lunches, drinkable water fountains,
Yeah.
reducing the teacher to student school ratio. You want smaller class sizes, that means we need more teachers. If you want wraparound services or social support for kids who've experienced trauma, that means we got to hire social workers. If you think if kids don't get access to health care in their own neighborhood, that school nurse on site can make a huge difference, right? I mean, and just small stuff like there was a study done around this issue of eyesight and in kids in urban schools, and then we looked at it in Baltimore. This is before I got on the council, so I can't take credit for it. But they looked at how many kids had access to vision care through their parents' insurance, or if they had it at all, and found that a lot of kids were coming from households that didn't have access to that at all. And so, but they couldn't see the board. And so, with the health department under Dr. Nguyen, who's now with Planned Parenthood, developed a partnership and started giving out eyeglasses, doing eye tests and giving out eyeglasses in city schools. And you saw among those kids, their grades went up. But, because they could now see the board. And we didn't know this whole time that they just couldn't see. So those kind of things, when we talk about where the money comes from for those kind of programs, it comes from school funding. And Baltimore City, and you mentioned Jealous, obviously I supported them.
Absolutely.
But one of the key reasons why was that over the last term of the last 4 years, the only jurisdiction, at least last year, that got funding cut was PG County and Baltimore City. And so when we talk about the fact that we have the highest number of kids with living in neighborhoods where they may experience trauma, where they may be low income, where they speak or kids that speak a second language or may have a learning disability, we have the highest concentration of students that have a lot going on outside of the classroom. And so we need the most money. And yes, we need accountability. We need audits in North Avenue, which they do. This is how we've been finding things that have been going wrong. But at the end of the day, we've also found that if we just tweaked the formula a little bit and added a calculation for concentrated poverty, kids living in low-income communities. If you just added that as a part of the formula, the literal funding formula, and they have a way to do it that I won't get into, but it's a whole data analysis process. Sorry, I get in the weeds on stuff. I'm trying to get better. We would bring in another $250 to $300 million a year in Baltimore City schools. That would be huge. I mean, just when I came in office, you asked me what it's like. The first 2 weeks in office, when I got elected in 2016, I started in 2017, was a meeting with Dr. Santelises and her giving us the announcement that you're going to find out in the news in 2 days that we have a $130 million budget shortfall. If we just tweak the formula just a little bit, that conversation never happens. We're not laying off 100 teachers across the state, across the city, and trying to figure out how to downsize to meet those cuts, right? That's a big deal. And so in January, I'll get to the involved part. I know I got went
No, you're
way
good.
around.
Because something came up in my mind, because when it's time to go to vote, it's a lot of those questions about the funding of schools and your community and libraries. And do you find it they check off to fund?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You mean the ballot question?
Yeah, the ballot question.
That's another reason people need to vote.
All
yes.
right. Sorry. Okay.
That's a
you
good
made
point.
me think about the opportunity that we
Yeah.
get as a community. Even like we miss these town hall meetings.
Yeah.
It is important to vote because of that. It gives you that opportunity to pick the questions.
You can skip every elected official if you want. Still come and vote for the ballot questions.
Do y'all hear that?
And those were important ones. Sorry, I'll divert for a second.
We're going to go back. We're going to go back to...
Yeah, but that's important, right? So just on this election alone, we had the banning of water. So there was an attempt.
There was so many.
Water privatization. So that was one that was. I'll hit the big ones. So that was a big one. It was something the council. So the city council can't change the city charter. Only the voters can do that. So that's where a lot of those questions come from.
Okay.
So if we pass something that is outside of our powers, we have to let the voters do it. So y'all do it. So the voters
see how important this is?
The voters of Baltimore City just prohibited the sale of our water system, which is when you look at what went on in Flint, Michigan.
Good.
No, that's good.
That's good.
That's a great
Okay.
thing. That was the most confusing question.
All right, because I was
when
like,
you read it,
okay, good.
Well, it's funny because my grandmother called me like, I voted against that. I'm like, no. I was like, no. You wanted to vote yes. Yes means that we cannot ever sell the water system.
Okay.
That's what yes.
And I think I say yes.
Yeah, please. Yeah, it's fine. It passed.
It passed. Okay.
It passed. They all passed. We had
Wonderful.
We had the independent inspector general. So the inspector general is a position in City Hall that they investigate waste, fraud, abuse, stealing money, and we have a very good one right now. But right now it's under the mayor's office, and so the council passed that one as well. Basically, with the idea that this type of position shouldn't be political. It shouldn't be that you work for the mayor and then you may have to investigate something in the mayor's office. How's that going to go? So the voters voted to support the council's position, which is that should be an independent position. That passed. I had a question on there, actually question H, which was the Fair Election Fund. When I ran for office, it was very difficult to raise money. I don't come from money. I don't come from a wealthy family. And so raising capital to spend on T-shirts, and I see you got all the swag here.
You know me?
It costs money,
It
right?
does.
So when you run in, my race, I ended up raising over $80,000 to run for office,
so
which
that
is
passed.
crazy. Yeah, so this creates a Fair Election Fund, which creates will create a matching program that will allow candidates who want to commit to taking small donations to get a match. That way we take big money out of politics. You don't want to have a huge influence of special interest groups that control the debate and control the dialogue or pick who wins elections. It should be the people who pick who wins elections. So that one passed. We also had on there a lockbox for casino funding, and which was always I always hear, what happened to the lottery money? What happened to casino? I thought it was supposed to go to schools. And the problem and I know people who say it a lot. The casino money was supposed to go to schools. It does actually, but it wasn't. It was an okie doke in a way that you saw that legislators, instead of keeping the money that was already going on top of the casino money, they redirected that funding somewhere else. And so what that one ballot question around the lockbox does is that prevents that funding from going anywhere else. The casino money can only go to schools, and it can't be used for anything else at all. And that passed. And then there was some capital money for like rec and parks and school construction and that kind of thing. So those are really important.
That's why I wanted to bring that up, because I think a lot of people, when they go to vote, they're thinking about, well, I didn't even know this was going on, or like the questions really make you be like, it's a lot going on that we do need to do better in. And I think that's why I wanted to bring it up for the people that don't understand that even if you don't select a Democrat or a Republican, that those questions, the ballot questions are very, very important.
Yep.
And another thing, and I'm gonna let you can take the floor.
Sure.
We got 15 minutes.
Okay.
But I got actually your playlist to keep you going.
Okay.
As far as the Democrats getting the House, explain to them that that's still a good thing. No, we didn't take the Senate. Well, we took the House. The Democrats taking the House, the Republicans taking the Senate. Explain to the people who aren't familiar with why that's still important, why it's still a good thing that we got the House.
Yeah.
Meaning the Democrats.
Well, so
jealous.
I'll start with the fact that Elijah Cummings is now going to chair the Government Accountability Committee. And so he's going to be able to call hearings. He's going to be able to subpoena tax records for Trump. He's going to be able to do investigations that the Democrats will lead, that will look into where his money's coming from, his involvement with Russia, all of the things that we know are also being investigated by the FBI right now. So having him be the chair of that particular committee is incredibly powerful. It also allows us the ability to slow down the Trump agenda. I won't say, obviously there's Republicans who aren't all for Trump. A good amount of them are, unfortunately. But it will add another check, because when the party has complete control over the House and the Senate, that means everything that they want to get done pretty much flies through. Obviously there's going to be debate and there'll be some slowdown, but when you have a hyper-partisan political climate like we have now in Washington, it does give you another check on their ability to get things done. And my completely biased opinion is that that's a good thing with this current administration. Okay. That obviously I'm a government wonk, so I'm like, well, checks and balances are good. You want to, you do want, even I find in the work that I do, which is less dramatic in fashion than what you see on a national level, you do want opposition to have an opportunity to weigh in and say, well, look, this is why we want you, just so that you look at things a different way. I find, and not even just in politics, just in general, whether it's on social media, just our society, everybody feels like their opinion is the only one that matters, that their perspective can't be challenged. And we live in these soundproof rooms where we only want people who agree with us to talk to us, and if you don't, you're getting blocked. And that's easy. And if you look at your social media feeds, I see people on on live here, and if everybody on your page is saying exactly what you agree with, that's okay. I mean, we love the comfort of it, but sometimes you might be wrong. And here's why. And you should listen to, or it makes you fine tune your argument a little bit better when you're around people who have a different lens. So I think on a national level, it's important that we have that check, because we haven't had it under the first 2 years of this administration. And so a lot of bad policy has been able to get through pretty easily, whether we talk about banning Muslims, sending troops to Mexico for this caravan that isn't actually a huge deal but was used for political purposes, or real serious issues like trying to undermine the Affordable Care Act. People need health care, and we're really playing games out here with people's ability to see a doctor or be able to afford insurance. And
housing. I know you're into the housing.
Yeah, I mean, these are all...
you're very big on housing in Baltimore, and... Give us a little, because is that something you got right into as far as you being a council member?
Yeah. I didn't already know a lot about housing work.
He does so much. Yeah. I'm sorry to keep stopping you.
No, you're good.
And trying to, but there's so much, and a lot of people really don't know.
Yeah, I wish the news reported more what the local elected officials are up to.
And because it always it's levels.
Yeah. So we did some pretty cool stuff on the housing side since I've been in. I passed a bill that helps renters get access to resources. So starting next year, when you sign a lease, if you're renting, you look through that paperwork. There should be something in there that has information on financial resources, legal resources, and your rights as a tenant, so that to slow down the eviction process. Obviously some people, because we know people are struggling. Like some people fall behind, and you should know that there's help out there. And so that was a bill I passed that required landlords to have a resource list. And when you sign a lease, and the sheriff's department will send it out. So if you get to the point where you are falling behind, and literally every month, there are 3,000 eviction notices sent out by the sheriff's office in Baltimore City. every month. So every month, starting now, there'll be this resource list that we have going out that explains your rights as a tenant. And the idea isn't, I know some folks may follow you, got some properties that are like, why are you trying to make it harder for me to get rid of people who don't pay or don't want to pay? And that's not the intent. The intent is to actually keep people stable, right? We got to stabilize our neighborhoods. There's so many people who are a paycheck away from homelessness.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that has to do with housing affordability. Yeah, see? It's real out here. And so, when we talk about affordability, housing affordability in Baltimore City, it's becoming more and more of a challenge for people to keep the lights on, to keep the rent paid.
Absolutely.
And when some people are, I think they said in Baltimore or the region, people spend upwards of 60% of their income on just housing. That is a problem.
That is a big problem because as a state worker, no children, it's very, I really, if you break it down, I'm supposed to be still living with my mom.
Yeah. That's
the income that I bring in, I'm really technically supposed to stay mine.
Right. You're supposed to stay back at home. Yeah. And a lot of people do it. Hey. And it's, but those things are preventable. So that's one thing that we did was for stabilization. I'd say a bigger bill we just got through that was put in by my colleague, Councilman Bullock, was to fund our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So we mentioned the ballot questions. In 2016, there was one that created an affordable housing trust fund in Baltimore, and the voters passed that. That was question J in 2016. And we didn't have, so it created the fund, but we had to figure out, all right, well, we got the bank account. How do we get money into it?
Okay.
And so we just passed legislation. I will not bore y'all with recordation tax policy, but we created a new tax for transactions over $1 million. So unless you got $1 million house, this probably won't affect you. Or if you're selling that $1 million house, it might.
Okay.
But so it's a marginal increase that will, in a commitment from the mayor's office, in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll have upwards of $20 million a year. It's going to increase over the next 4 years. That'll go into an affordable housing trust fund that can't be used for anything else other than helping to provide more affordable housing, whether that's helping people with construction, helping to expand just like financial resources for people, creating community land trusts, which is a whole other topic around creating permanently affordable neighborhoods that the rent just stays at a rate that people can afford, that low-income families can afford. They've done this in other places. Actually, we have a couple of land trusts in Baltimore already, but
Wonderful.
They've been very big in other parts of the country. So we're looking at that kind of thing. So that's a big deal for me because the only map I have a bunch of maps in my office, but the only one posted on the wall. If people come by and shoot me an email, we can meet, talk. If you have ideas, you can see this map I'm talking about. But the only one that's up on my wall has all the vacant houses in my district. And the reason why is that I know that they're red dots. And the higher concentration of those red dots is also where I have the most violence, where I have the most addiction issues, opioid issues. I mean, you name it. The challenges that I spend most of my days on are in those same areas. So for me, if I can get families into those houses that are stable, can afford the rent, they're going to be invested. They're going to cut the grass. They're going to pick up the trash. You'll have a more stable community, and then you start to see those other social ills change. But there's always a direct correlation between poverty, housing, and violence and trauma in Baltimore and across the country, and education access. I mean, all of these things are critical. And so for me, I spend a lot of time working on the housing side and walking through alleys and trying to keep my district clean because I know that there's those connection points between the things that people experience on one end and their ability to live in a stable home, in a stable environment. And I mean, that's not even talking about the people who may be staying in vacant houses, right? And they need help. That's a thing in Baltimore. It's a thing across the country. And, so for me, addressing those issues, I think we moved the city forward in a big way. So I have spent a lot of time working on housing. And it's something I came in passionate about. Like the trafficking work came later. I've always been big on education as well, which is why I was happy to be on the education committee. And we had a big fight last year where we were cuts to the student bus pass program. We literally held a bake sale, which was wild. But we raised enough money to close the gap and get kids back on the bus. I don't know if people remember that, but last year there was a cut on the S pass.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so we led the fight on that to restore funding for that program. And I'm thankful to the folks at the state who, after they saw us, because people don't know, the MTA, the school system, and the police department are all controlled by the state, largely. Obviously, once you get down into the weeds, we do have some oversight, but for the most part, those three things are things that the council can't really legislate on. But we can use outside power and influence to make a difference, and we did that. But those are, I think, are really important things that if we talk about turning around Baltimore, turning around the city, we got to get our schools better, we got to get our neighborhoods stronger, and we got to end the violence in Baltimore. People got to put the guns down. And ceasefire, yeah, I love ceasefire. I love the work that they do. For me, it's super personal because I know a lot of the people who put that together and the work that they were doing before ceasefire. I mean, these are like OGs on peace work in Baltimore, whether it's through 300 Men March, Band of Brothers. A lot of them do mediation work as well through community mediation, which ending conflict and navigating conflict is so important. When we talk about the reasons that people pull guns in the first place, a lot of it's so petty that people who if we just figured out how to use our words. Yeah, use your words. Let's communicate. Let's talk through it. We don't have to put our hands on people or pull out guns on people to navigate conflict. And so I definitely support the work that ceasefire does because it's more than, and for them it's, everyone's like, why is this a weekend? But it's like, well, one, like those are lives that are preserved. Like if people commit to
start somewhere.
Yeah, and they do the work, and the people who are involved in that movement, I know for sure are involved in this work every single day. Whether it's mentorship, working in schools, working in their communities, these people are awesome. And for me, that's why I support it because it's more than just the weekend. It's more than the T-shirts and everything they do on the ceasefire weekend, which I know is coming up in January, I believe is the next one. So
speaking of January, talent show January is the
January 5th. Yeah, January 5th at
5:30.
Yeah, Miracle City Church.
South.
Yeah, North Bend. Yeah.
So right now you are recruiting local
artists. Yeah.
Okay,
so if you sing, you dance, we're doing a District 8 talent showcase on January 5th.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
District 8 talent show.
It's all right. You don't have to live in the district. We want you to live in the district. But if you live in West Baltimore, that's good too. Or whatever you're in Baltimore. We want you to come out and showcase. I mean, so part of the thinking with that was I do a community academy series where I teach classes on like how to deal with vacant houses, how to navigate public safety issues, or how to use 311. So for me it was like, all right, let's try something a little bit more social, a little bit more laid back. Let's highlight the arts, especially because we have so much talent in Baltimore.
Yes, we do.
I wanted to showcase that. And so we're doing this big talent show on January 5th. So come on out, check it out. If you go on any of my social media, the flyer should be up there. And so we're doing that. Yeah.
So you're looking for local talent.
Local talent. I need Baltimore. I want Baltimore to come out and show out.
Preferably West Side.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from.
Yeah, we go.
West Side. All right, I'm sorry. No, I'm not ganging. It's a joke.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
They had the courage and the tenacity to keep through it because I know that a lot of people don't come out and support the way they're supposed to and need to. So how do you keep yourself motivated? What do you listen to? What's on your playlist?
So when I was running for office, every single day I would wake up and play Kendrick Lamar, It's Gonna Be Alright. Every morning. It drove my wife insane by like month 8 because it was literally just like how I started my day. But I'm habitual like that. Like I need to listen to the same stuff.
Ritual,
but but I'll do that. So my Get Ready playlist.
Yeah, how you get yourself to...
So definitely Kendrick.
You're on 4 committees, right?
4 committees. I'm on the HIV Commission. I co-chair the Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm on a couple school family councils in my district. I'm going to be doing some work with the Family League moving forward. So, yeah, I got a lot.
So close out with everything you do in your playlist.
So, yeah, I'm on all those committees. A lot of great work there. And, yeah, so my get ready would be Dreams and Nightmares, Meek Mill. Kendrick Lamar, a whole bunch of Kendrick Lamar tracks. He always gets me hyped. I listen to a lot of J. Cole. I listen to Easy Jackson. Shout out to a local Baltimore rapper.
Shout out to Easy Jackson.
Easy's the man. I used to work with Easy back at when we did some of the labor union work.
Okay.
And for me, it's like anything that just gets you motivated, that's positive. And I also will admit to, I do listen to Travis Scott.
Okay. You said, like, I'm gonna admit, I like Travis Scott. No, that's good. So you like his latest CD. So do you think, like, I ask everybody this question as, my peer, do you think a certain age, like Andre 3000 went into movies and then, Jay-Z and Rick Ross, they still going?
I was a big Hov fan growing up. That was all I listened to.
Do you think eventually they supposed to stop?
Yeah,
Or do you
I think at some point you might want to
music?
hang it up. I mean, Jay seems to be so into like the business side of things now. Whether he has I subscribe to Tidal. I try to support black.
So you're a big Jay fan,
yeah,
big Kendrick fan.
Yeah, I grew up only Jay, like Jay, Biggie, Diplomats. I was a huge Cameron fan. I still am. Follow him on Instagram. I know they got an album about to come out. Yeah. Oh, trust me, I already know. I was already texting
I got you on this one. I know. All right.
And actually, I didn't even realize that the new the Lock still got it. Apparently,
everybody still got it. So that's why I wanted to know. Do you feel like? Because the
Pusha album was fire recently.
I
didn't even grow up a big Pusha fan, but the new album was fire. So yeah, I listen to a lot of hip hop. If you get in my car, people usually are surprised.
So is that one of the things that's you being a councilman that they are surprised?
But I'm young too. I'm 32, so I grew up on hip hop, and so yeah, there's definitely
that's like
kind of hilarious, especially with some of the older council members. They're just like, bro,
this kind of music.
But then I still listen to Coltrane too, though. So I have some range. I love jazz music. I love the blues. I love old school R&B. I listen to a lot of music, so I'm a big into music because for me it's like a good way to like either whether it's like because we all identify with certain songs with our emotions or what we're feeling, or maybe you need to pick me up, or maybe you're feeling down.
Absolutely, that's why I had to get
into your playlist. You want a song that makes you feel down too. Maybe you listen to whatever.
Because you got a lot going on, and I'm really really excited. Thank you so much for coming. I know you've talked a lot about you're big on education. Before we started, you was talking about something in 2 years. Did you touch over everything you needed to talk?
Yeah, so I forgot. So yeah, in January,
STEM, you got a STEM.
So I got a STEM festival coming up. I'll stop now. But Kerwin Commission for your point about how people can get involved. In Annapolis, this coming legislative session, which starts in January, there will be a number of hearings on school funding, which is critical that people show up for that. Education is life, and we won't be revisiting this for another 10 to 15 years. So there's a whole generation of kids. What date is this again? Those will come out. I'll make sure I send them to you.
Okay, please.
There's going to be a rally in March, but I think the details are still being worked out. Okay. But all of this is 2019, but we get one shot to do this.
Yes.
The other thing around education, on December 8th, I have a STEAM festival, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It's for anybody. You don't have to live in my district. Come on out. But it'll be an opportunity. So I've reached out to a lot of organizations that do tech, technology, that do art, that they work with kids after school. And it's just going to be fun. Like just different activities for kids. Some of it's going to be playing video games, but we're also learning how to develop video games and what goes into that. Because when we talk about like the 21st century, technology is where it's at. I mean, we're on like multiple devices right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we need to make sure our kids not only know how to use social media, but they can make a lot of money building apps. Building devices. I mean, our kids, the possibilities are endless with our young people. What date is that again? December 8th.
December 8th. Yeah. I'm going to bring my nephew.
Yeah, come on out. At Emerson High School. Go Red Storm. Emerson, where you at? So the only high school in my district, but I love Emerson. And actually, fun fact: the current principal at Emerson was my middle school principal at Chicopin. Wow. So we have a great relationship, and of course, he used to keep me on detention and everything. So shout out to Mr. Perry for helping me get here.
So
it was a struggle.
Grandmom inspired you. You went to school for something completely different. Changed your major. Now you're here. Passed a lot of legislation bills. You the man.
I appreciate it.
Please keep me.
It wouldn't be done without the people, though.
Without the people.
There's a lot of people who support me in my district. These events are always packed with people who want to get involved. People like you to reach out to me all the time. Hey, I have this skill. I have this thing. How do I help out in your district? How to help out in the community? And I think when we talk about how do we turn it around, it's those kind of questions. What can I do to turn around Baltimore? Because I can't get it done by myself. I tell people that all the time. I am not Superman. I may feel like it some days when we're getting some victories for Baltimore, but at the end of the day, I need the people with me, and people have to show up and give back. So thank you to everybody who does amazing work. Yeah. So again, you can follow me. I'm on Instagram at Kristerfer B. I am on Facebook, Councilman Kristerfer Burnett. Twitter, Councilman KB. Or you can email me at christopher.burnett@baltimorecity.gov. Or you can call 410-396-4818. And I try to keep an open door policy, so, reach out.
Congratulations on everything. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
It's your girl, Miss V. I am here on Radio on Fire now. Shout out to Diamond K. I want y'all to get familiar. I want to say December the 16th with the BMAs. Your girl V will be here next Saturday with Valley Smalls. Shout out to Valley Smalls. He is an artist. He got some new music out. And I want y'all to get familiar with him next Saturday. Hopefully... I think the 8th I have someone on as well, but I should see you next Saturday for sure. Again, shout outs to New Era, my last Saturday guest. Happy Thanksgiving to all. I want y'all to get familiar with Councilman Kristerfer Burnett. If you don't know who your councilman is, reach out, do some research. You can even reach out to Councilman Burnett.
Yeah. BaltimoreCityCouncil.gov.
That's where you go, okay?
Cool.
So make sure y'all stay in the loop. It's very important to have a seat at the table. Am I saying it right?
You have a seat at the table, or you what's being served?
Or your what's being served. So get familiar with Kristerfer Burnett. Thank you so much for coming. And again, I will be here next Saturday. Shout out to Diamond K. Happy holidays. Stay safe. Shout out to all my sponsors and everything like that. Shea Beauty, Eyelash Tech, Essence. She has some strip sales going on right now. I don't know if the Black Friday sale is still going on. Shout out to Full Bloom Mag. The V-Mix column is now featured in the 8th edition. So I want y'all to get familiar with Camille Marine and Nix the Futures, Full Bloom Magazine. And it's the V-Mix column. That's my first article. Not only do I offer interview services, I also offer writing services. So if you're interested in writing services as far as Full Bloom, like a V-Mix column on you, just send me some inquiries to the vmix@gmail.com. And if you would like to be a guest on the show, the vmix@gmail.com. Send some inquiries. All right, bye, y'all. I see y'all next Saturday. Thanks, Diamond.
Cast your votes right now for the 8th Annual Baltimore Music Awards.
The Baltimore Music Awards is something that's thrown every year to acknowledge you. Yes, you out there for your talents and your efforts and your achievements that you do.
You decide the winners in this 2018 competition.
Every year when it comes to music, entertainment, radio personality, model, or from any of that perspective, we're here to celebrate you. And it's funny because when this first started 8 years ago, a lot of people thought that it couldn't happen.
The 8th Annual Baltimore Music Awards.
We need to acknowledge our people out there, but in our own community, it was something needed.
Watch the results show Sunday, December the 16th at 12 noon via RadioOnFire.com or BaltimoreMusicAwards.com.